Howdy, folks. Today we have Rahul Tarak, co founder of Modfy. And Modfy is an in browser world class video editor. And they are revolutionizing desktop video editing, especially. And they also pitch themselves as Figma, but for video. And they are bringing collaboration to video editing, which is mind blowing. And in this episode, we will get to know about Rahul's journey and his product. And my friend Aditya from Twitter connected me with him, and I was amazed to hear about his story and his whole journey. And in this podcast, we will get to hear his journey from his own mouth, and so I'm excited. So let's welcome Rahul. Welcome, Rahul. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for the great intro. But yeah, excited to be here.
Awesome. So can we begin by listening to your story? Like, how did you get into programming, and then you when did you decide to drop out, and how did you come up with this idea of I want to make video editing better, especially on desktop? So I mean, yeah, like this is quite a challenging issue because you have great competition from Resolve and Premiere Pro, and you have picked out an interesting and challenging problem. So yeah, how was the whole journey for you?
Where do you kind of want to start, right? Like that's a very broad question. So be
let's
kind of
let's let's start from the beginning. Yeah, so you do a lot of engineering on Modfy, right? So how did that come up? What did you do in school, and did you get into programming in school or when?
I've been programming for forever now. I think I started programming probably when I was 12 or 13, something like that. I have been using computers since when I can remember, since when maybe I was 5 or 6. I always found a way with computers. I was very good at them, kind of understood them very quickly. I loved solving problems and doing weird things, and computers were just the right place to do that, right? The feedback loops were really good. It was really fast to iterate. It was really good in the sense that I could kind of do whatever I wanted without like all these barriers. Whereas like that kind of the kind of scope to do like interesting things in mathematics or physics comes much later,
Hmm.
and you need to do all this like honestly kind of nonsense to get there to do the fun stuff. Whereas in programming, you kind of start like where you start in programming is essentially like advanced calculus in mathematics, right? So you were skipping 12, 14 years of education when you start writing a for loop, and that's awesome. And it allows you to do interesting things from day one. It allows you to start building fun things from day one. So I was always like really into programming, and I kind of like started hacking away. It kind of came from always comes from laziness. So it came from laziness, um,
Okay.
laziness to do other work, to
Right.
use other products, or something along those lines would will always kind of push the programming forward. But then I kind of fell in love with hackathons, and then I started going to hackathons when I was really young. Probably my first hackathon was I was in seventh or eighth grade. This was in India in 2013, 2014,
Okay.
where we used to have to get a fake ID to go to hackathons. It's not like people encouraged people going to hackathons. Definitely not kids.
Oh, okay.
Definitely not. Yeah, like it used to like you were not allowed to go to hackathons if you were like in high school, even college that point, but like even high school, not really. And the amount of hackathons and the amount of things like much lower back then. So like I remember like we used to literally get fake IDs or get like intros or get someone to get us into the hackathons so we could go to these hackathons and things like that. Kind of bubbled from them.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that you needed fake IDs to get into hackathons. I mean, for people nowadays, yeah, that might sound strange, yeah. But yeah, I think yeah, a few years back, yeah, there were not much of these things happening. Uh, Maybe it might be happening more in the metropolitans, but yeah, definitely not a lot of them.
But even in Bangalore, right? Like I'm from Bangalore. I was in Bangalore. I grew up spent most of my life in Bangalore. I think Bangalore is a very different city 5 years ago. Very different city growing up. It's not your traditional Silicon Valley's fairy tale story that you kind of hear. All of these networks kind of pass over you when you're like a resident and you kind of live here. These networks are kind of insider networks, but also kind of outsider networks. Like all the people in this network are almost kind of outsiders, but then they kind of make an insider network. So if you're kind of like born here and you live here, not necessarily part of those networks, you're interacting in different places. And definitely like hackathon culture and stuff was not really a big thing.
Mhm.
Um, it was much better than other places, right? Like I used to search for hackathons everywhere. So I was looking at hackathons like all across India. And I never ended up going anywhere else, but I used to like keep track of all these hackathon platforms and stuff. And sure, Bangalore had the most, but it was still not like if
Very
you wanted to
open.
get a hackathon every weekend, it was not a thing. Like there was a point when I hated school so much that I used to want to go to hackathon every weekend. I used to bunk school and try to go every weekend.
Okay.
And that didn't work. I could maybe do that like once a month, max twice a month if I'm lucky. So yeah, it wasn't very common, and it wasn't very common in terms of like the kind of hackathons I was eligible to go to and stuff like that too.
I personally have never been to a hackathon, but I mean, the closest thing to a hackathon I participated is in like I was very active in game development in my high school days. So I repeatedly went to this game design competition, and yeah, every time we we ended up losing. But yeah, I mean, yeah, hackathons are super fun. Yeah. Okay, so that was about your programming. So I mean, then where did you go to college, and when did you like decide to drop out? How all of that happened?
So I guess some context here is um, everyone and their like mother in like tech kind of says, "Oh, education is broken, education sucks, this that," and it's not really a contrarian position, but as someone growing up in like kind of in India in like a metropolitan city, but still growing up in India, doing CBSE for a long time,
Hmm,
and having this position when you were in sixth or seventh or eighth grade, it's an extremely contrarian position. It was not where when you went up to your teachers and said like everything you're doing is full of shit, and this is like you're teaching me nonsense and you're being like ridiculous. It's an extremely contrarian position,
hmm,
and I always kind of knew I wouldn't fit anywhere well into the Indian education system, and I didn't. But I didn't really like ever consider uh, going abroad. I always thought like, okay, maybe I'll get there eventually. And there was this huge like hatred and desire to leave India for a long time. But I never actually thought about it as a real possibility. It was always like, okay, this is for like my super rich friends. It's not for me, right? Like this is not something that I can actually afford or kind of do. And like I was in this like really shitty but like considered one of the best schools in Bangalore kind of situations for like 8 or 9 years. It was a CBSE school. It was really bad. And there was this point when like between 10th and 11th, you kind of have to um, like reapply to keep your seat or whatever. And I told
hmm.
these guys like from day one, like I'm not gonna apply to your school. Your school is really shitty. Like I'm not even gonna take your like
Okay.
uh but it was not inherently clear where I would go. There were a couple of options about like, okay, let's go to like some really like kind of like light schools that you don't do anything on, and on the side you just keep hacking or you kind of do something else, and then maybe take the SAT and try to go abroad like that, or figure out something else. And then my mom finally came up with the plan of okay, let's actually go to an international school. It's obviously much more expensive, and you're kind of committing to go abroad. But that kind of finally happened, and in like 11th and 12th grade, I actually moved to like a really, really good school. Um, and it was great. I've heard like things have kind of changed in the school. It's not as good anymore.
Hmm,
I think part of the reasons why it was so good was it was very new. We were the second batch. The first batch had only two students, like for 11th and 12th. So we were the second batch of only 20 students. So we had like immense control to kind of change the direction of where the school went, immense control to do kind of whatever we wanted. There was not as much bureaucracy,
hmm,
and that was like great. But at that point, I was kind of in this track between both my international school friends and other kind of friends that I had of like the most ambitious thing you can do is go to school abroad,
hmm,
and kind of in this track of going abroad. So that kind of happened. I was still never really a good student, but I did kind of like my on my SATs. But I was doing this program called IB. So
hmm.
IB allows you to use those grades to go abroad, and I was able to go to the University of Toronto. Also, give me 1 second. My puppy's barking. Just gonna go let him in.
Sure.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so then I ended up at the University of Toronto. This was in 2019. I never expected to get into such a good college. Uh, but the way like IB grades convert is becomes very high. So kind of an average IB grade converts to like a 95% in Canada or whatever. So you kind of get into better schools, you can kind of hack the system and kind of do that. And I kind of chose to go there because I thought it would be like one of the best schools in the world, and I didn't want to like give up the opportunity to go to such a good school. And potentially, if my career was not doing well in like 10 years, then I would like regret this. It was one of the
Right.
worst decisions I made. There's a lot we can get into of why the school was terrible, but the school is terrible in like many capacities, from the way it was structured to the bureaucracy, through how Canadian education kind of um, how the Canadian education system itself is kind of broken for international students kind of partaking in the system, uh, and how uh, the campus was really terrible. The kind of people there was extremely unambitious and not who didn't really want to do interesting things. Obviously, not all. There were some smart people. I met my co-founder there, but more or less, it was kind of like that. The teachers were kind of really bad for the most part, and yeah, it just didn't. It was not really like an enjoyable or pleasant experience.
So, like, not much different from a typical tier 3 college in India, you would say.
Oh no. There were like leagues of differences, right? Like,
Okay.
uh, I think like I think I'm not sure what kind of audience you kind of have, so it's a difference. But um, in India, in India, education is like really bad, uh, and colleges are really bad. Like even the best colleges in India, I'd say, are quite dog shit. Uh, Here, this college was bad, but bad in different reasons, right?
Right.
Um, you're not losing ownership. Like you're not losing agency. There's no like concept of like discipline in these colleges. There's no wear this, wear that, go to your canteen here, live here. There's a curfew here. None of this nonsense exists abroad. You're treated like a human being.
Right.
Uh, you pick your classes. You kind of do this one. So, like, on an absolute level, is it good? No, it's really bad. On a relative level, is it good? Yeah, there are like leagues of
Okay.
differences, right? Like it's uh, like I would say it's still better than a tier one college in India. It's just
Okay.
that like
Okay.
that's
Yeah,
still
yeah.
really bad,
Yeah, that's what I
right?
wanted to know, right? Okay, okay. Because
Like
I also planned, I also got admissions into abroad, but in the end, I didn't get enough scholarship to attend them. But yeah, I'm like, I still have the abroad colleges on a pedestal, so I just wanted to clarify, what's the situation like since you have been there.
so each college is different, right? Each college is vastly different. Your experiences can be vastly different. There are definitely colleges that have good professors, and even for me, I had good professors. They were just not my computer science professors,
Right.
right? Uh, I had um, I had 10 professors, I think, over the year. My six computer science professors were the worst.
Okay.
Then was the business one, which was okay. My two arts and my physics professor were the best by far, right? My physics professor was incredible. I've talked about this so much. Is this guy? I think he's on like the Nobel Prize committee for physics. Uh, Absolutely incredible. He was teaching a computational physics class. So
Hmm.
this was teaching computer, like teaching math, teaching computer science, and physics all together. The breadth of knowledge, the kind of depth he can go, the way the class was structured, everything was beyond incredible. But the thing about this class was I kind of credited into this class. So abroad, there's a system of credits. You can kind of take classes this one.
Right.
This was not a first year class. This was actually like on paper it said it's second year class, but practically it was a third year class. which I was taking in my first semester. So
Okay.
that was one of the big differences.
Right.
So I was taking a much later class. It was much better. The other thing was this, because it was outside this like CS track, and like, oh, like we have so many thousands of thousand students, and we're doing all this filtering and doing all this nonsense. It was a class of like 20 people. Maybe a couple of them were like doing it as electives, a couple of them were doing it as like physicists trying to learn some computation or XYZ. Um, the class didn't have any of this uh, like departmental politics that was happening in the other classes, and like this structure and bureaucracy and like all this other things. So it was this class with this professor with immense control, where he kind of set the entire class, did everything he wanted, and it was his class, right? And it was like, I'm going to teach you whatever I teach you. And like, I have been working in computers since the 60s, and I've been building supercomputers. And you walk into his office, and he has like a rack full of GPUs, and
Okay.
his on his desk he'll have a computer with 300 cores, 500 cores, and he's like, "Hey, I'm hacking away this. Do you want to help me with this?" And
Epic.
uh, so you do have these kind of professors, but it's outside the kind of like departments. The
Hmm.
same thing was true for my arts classes. I took two arts classes in my winter semester. Absolutely incredible professors, right? Like this kind of class you will never in a million years get anywhere in India.
Oh,
Right?
okay.
These kind of professors, these kind of classes you'll never get. But over under the CS department was still kind of uh, like it is, I would say, almost like the Indian or more broadly like this kind of Asian kind of focus on um, like grinding away these things. This kind of culture had like really penetrated the CS classes in the CS department there.
Hmm.
Like those classes almost felt like they were trying to replicate an Indian system of teaching. It was like really bad, right? It was like, um,
Like theory,
yeah,
and less of practical things. Like what is he supposed to be? I mean, like you're
sure,
teaching quality or like,
there's some of that.
uh,
There's some of that, but it's also teaching quality. It's about like not skipping classes, about the bureaucracy of how that college works. There's a lot of specificity there, and I think it changes between each college, right? Like
okay.
I'm talking about one college in one course, in 1 year, right? Like these things change radically, and they're always changing. So I wouldn't want to like broadly paint a picture. I think the abroad college equation becomes really bad for different reasons. It becomes really bad for normally cost reasons.
Right.
Uh, in India, you're talking about spending a few $1,000s, like if you're talking in dollars,
Right.
on a college, maybe something like 10, $15,000 for 4 years.
Right.
There
Right.
we're talking about 200
Right.
minimum, right?
Right.
So the amount of like the quality of expectation is it has to be 10x better. Also, sorry, my puppy wants to leave again. He's
Sure. Sure. Sure.
yeah. That's just how dogs are. So you're talking about something very different, right? You're comparing things at very different price points. So I think the abroad college equation at an Indian price point, apart from opportunity cost, probably makes sense for a lot of people. It's just that like at that price point, it's very difficult to make that value prop work, right?
Right. Right.
Um,
I mean, yeah, that's why people prefer to go for masters, because you usually it's easier to get scholarship in masters and get your full 1 or 2 years funded and still get that value prop somehow without losing all your money. But yeah.
I wouldn't take away like if your scholarship, like if you're getting a scholarship, that's like a discount on the base price, right? But the amount of practical like economic output, like amount of value you need to get, that thing still costs $100,000. You might be only fronting $10,000. You might get a massive scholarship, but you should still expect that value to be $400,000. The
Right. Right.
list price, the
Right.
sticker price is
Right.
$100,000, right? If they're discounting that, that's coming from somewhere else. That's coming from uh, basically their hedge fund. So,
Right.
like
Right.
I wouldn't take that philosophy. It's not that. if you are bearing some portion of this, like you should like lower your expectations or something like that. Like,
Okay, okay, okay. Then how did you land up with the idea of Modfy? Like, how did that journey started? Did you ideate that in like school, or did that start in college? When did the idea happen?
so I think that was like a long process, right? That definitely didn't start in college. It didn't start when I started taking my first gap semester. It kind of started over the process of the last year. I have a couple of great mentors and great investors. One in Daniel Cross from Pioneer.app,
Right,
who's kind of like pushed me to be more ambitious and kind of got this idea out of me. But it all kind of started in fall of 2020 when I knew I didn't want to go back to college and it was in COVID, so it didn't make any sense to go back to a remote college. 100% didn't make any sense.
right.
So I knew I was not going to go back to college for that semester at least. So I took the semester off and I was just hacking on a bunch of projects. And one of these projects was somewhat tangentially related to what Modfy is now, which is converting videos within the browser.
Mhm.
And that kind of spiraled into us getting into Pioneer.app and then talking to Daniel and then kind of becoming more ambitious and thinking about bigger problems we could solve. And then that kind of spiraled into this Figma for video thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it began in fall of 2020.
In some capacity, yeah.
Awesome, awesome. So like, what are the some of the biggest challenges you think you faced during all of this?
What
What
kind
was
of
completely
challenges?
like what was completely new for you, and what were the hard parts in this journey? You went through Pioneer, you had to apply. You also went through, I think, a fellowship. So I mean, a lot of stuff was new for you, and um, it's a technically challenging problem also. So what were some of the biggest challenges that you faced?
See, I think that's kind of a broad question again, right? Like there is like there's challenges in like dropping out, there's challenges in uh, um, how do you build a company, challenges in technology, there's challenges in what is your role uh, as an engineering CEO, there's challenges in hiring a team, there's
Right.
challenges in like that is too broad of a question. Like I think you kind of want to like if you want someone to kind of go off on a tangent, you kind of want to like have a good entry point, right? Like that's a very big, broad entry point. So what kind of challenges are most interesting to you or your audience?
Um, let's talk about Modfree, right? So, what were the technical challenges? I am a coder, right? So, I would want to know what were the most interesting features or the most challenging parts in Modfree that you built.
So building a video editor is like quite hard. I think the things are uh, there are a few competitors nowadays on like the online video space, but it's not many, and it's not to the level that these things are really documented. Right, you're constantly fighting with the browser and its ability to do what you want. You're constantly fighting with the kind of documentation and literature that's out there about like video and like video processing, video editing, etc. That's not like these things are not very accessible or easy to like digest or um, easy to understand. Most people working in video are just concerned about like video streaming, video delivery, whatever
Hmm.
Netflix has done,
Right.
uh, because that's kind of like the big business. Outside that, there's like really very little literature around video, right? So it's just a lot of like kind of pushing um, pushing the boundaries of what React is meant to do. So kind of building
Right.
a video editor is not really what React is meant to do, or not really what the DOM is meant to do. Then kind of pushing the limits of things like caching. So we have had a lot of problems with service workers and caching and using IndexedDB and doing
Hmm.
all these things to kind of split blobs and store them so that we can like be really fast and show you videos really quickly and kind of do these streaming things along that side. We even ran into like full bugs in Chromium source code where we reached out to the Chromium team and we kind of like worked on solutions with them. Well, they're kind of trying to implement them, but like it takes forever for
Right,
something like that to get shipped. Uh, or things like even the edges of WebAssembly, right? Like WebAssembly is a fairly new technology.
right,
There's some literature on it, but not a lot of literature, not a lot of people who fully understand what's happening in the space. And you're trying to not necessarily do something very easy with WebAssembly, right? Like let's run a video rendering engine inside WebAssembly
right.
is not necessarily a good first task to do with WebAssembly.
Yeah, it's
And that's
still
kind of where
early stages. Yeah, not a like I
so
was trying to check it out, but yeah, there aren't that many courses or even YouTube videos on WebAssembly to get you started. So yeah, definitely like working within these niche new technologies is definitely quite hard.
yeah, so like I think there's a lot of things there, right? Like um, me and my co-founder are fairly good engineers, but this is the biggest engineering project we worked on. We have a team, we have a designer, we have an engineer. We're bringing a couple of extra people on in the next few weeks, and there's a lot about like managing teams, managing how do you run an engineering team, how do
Right.
you make sure you're getting the best output from your designer and your engineers, and how do you motivate people, how do you make sure everyone's on the same page, writing documentation for such a big team, making sure like dealing with all this tech debt you accumulate.
Hmm.
um, there's parts of the code base that I will look at that I have written, and I look at it and say like I have no idea what this is or why
Right.
I wrote this, because it's not a 2 week project, right? It's been going on for a while.
Yeah.
The code base is quite big. It's quite dense. There's a lot of refactoring that happens when things refactor. Sometimes they break other things, etc., etc.
Yeah, working with teams like kind of 10x's your problems. Like as a solo developer, you have X problem, then you work with a team, then you have to keep all of these factors in mind. So yeah, your problems become 10x. So how are you doing hiring? Like I tried hiring a bunch of interns, but it's hiring is hard. Like I see people complaining, CEOs complaining hiring is hard, and then I finally got to see that yeah, hiring is hard because if you're not well known, it's not really easy to get people onboarded onto your project. So yeah, what were the challenges? How did you solve that issue for you?
So I will say for right now, our hiring has not been hard. We've had a great time hiring.
Okay,
We have some people on our team are really exceptional. Some people are pretty good. I think hiring is hard because for most CEOs, it should be top of mind, but it is not. It is something that you're not thinking about quite often. It is not something that uh, you spend the appropriate amount of time that you need to spend on. Hiring is not hard, hiring takes a lot of time. And that's a much better way to put it. Uh,
okay,
yes, there are things when you have to scale your engineering team, right? Like I'm sure when I want to go hire 10 or 15 more engineers, maybe in the next couple of years, I'm sure this like statement might change and I would say, yeah, it is getting harder or it is hard. But the point is most people don't spend the appropriate amount of time to build hiring funnels and build hiring systems
okay.
and build these things to hire. I think that there's a lot you can do in terms of hiring to make it much better. Um, like there are things about like agency, giving people ownership, paying people like
Right, right.
paying salary. Um, um, but I think the thing is like there are a lot of different hiring systems you can run, depending on your budget and depending on like the stage of your company. But we hired when we didn't have a lot of money. And we like for a company, we had got I think $10,000 from a fellowship, uh, and this was in multiple tranches. When we got our first $1,000 or $2,000, we were able to go hire an excellent designer and a fairly good engineer, and both were in India, so yeah, obviously they were cheaper. But we
Right.
were able to do that I think that's because you have to, as a CEO, kind of spend your time thinking a lot about hiring, right? Like I hate traditional hiring. So I
Right.
knew, like I've talked about this with years from my friends when I was talking about like potentially running a company that I would do hiring very differently. When I had the opportunity, I did it very differently. Right? Our engineering funnel, like our engineering hiring funnel is very different. We don't literally we don't give a shit about which college you come from. We
Right.
literally don't give a shit about your resume. I will literally trash your resume. Like right, like I will look at it for 30 seconds to see the top three links. Right.
Right.
We ran a hiring process that like basically we ran a funnel hiring process to find fairly competent people who other companies would just overlook because they go to a tier three college, or they don't have a brand name, or they
Right.
have a pseudonym on their resume, right? And
Right. Right.
we get fairly competent engineers. So we did that. I had my designer of Instagram. That's the other thing about a CEO. Your job is to always be hiring. I saw a story. This guy had done something really nice. He was in my network. Couple of friends. This one. DM'd him, hired him. He's still working with us. Everything about our platform that looks so beautiful is because of him. Absolutely amazing designer. Hired him off
Okay.
Instagram. Last week, they're going to be joining us the next couple of weeks. Last week, I had two people in 2 days, both friends, both people I had kept relationships with, built the relationship. The day
Okay.
I met one of these guys, I knew I was going to hire him. It was just a question of when.
Right.
And the minute you build the relationship, he knows that he knows who he's working for. And he knows he's working for someone he can call a friend, right? And he knows like what his role is going to be, how much agency he's going to have, how much he's going to be able to do for the company. And it becomes much easier to hire, right? So there's a problem at scaling these things. How do you scale this and do this like 100x, 1000x,
Right.
whatever? Like
Right.
it's not. But the best CEOs, the best founders, they do the same thing. They understand that hiring takes time, um, and
Mhm.
it's a long game. But if you're thinking about hiring, you're spending considerable amount of time hiring. Like at least to my experience so far, hiring has not necessarily been very hard.
Okay. Okay. I mean, yeah. What what I tried out is I have a Twitter feed, right? So I see people doing interesting projects. I then DM them, and yeah, those turn out to be better ways to reach out to people for hiring. So yeah, we definitely like the traditional hiring system is broken. Uh, Finding good people through Twitter or GitHub, that approach usually works out better. And yeah, I also tried out reaching out to some people I talked to a couple of years back within my LinkedIn network, and yeah, we had better conversations there, and they were ready to join. So yeah, yeah. So I mean, yeah, probably doing an angel list listing might not give you that much um, options that quickly, but yeah, reaching out within your network and on Twitter
I
is
would
actually
disagree. I think AngelList is a great way to hire. We hired an engineer of AngelList. If I'm looking to hire another engineer, I would go to AngelList again. I think it's a question about you need to build a pipeline on top of AngelList.
okay.
AngelList is a great distribution channel. You need to think about all these things as funnels and conversion rates, right? The way like you think about your actual company. And if you think about your hiring pipeline the same way, AngelList is like Google search or ads or whatever, right? Like it's a distribution channel. You need to convert after that, and you need to have a good pipeline on it. I think AngelList's actual like recruiter UI and all the recruiter tools are quite terrible. So you need to like off-platform them, run your own pipeline, run your own funnel, run your own tests, run your own things, and then you will have a really good, smooth experience. So we've had a great experience with AngelList. So again, I would disagree. Like I think like I
Okay.
would highly, highly recommend AngelList to a lot of people if they're looking to hire. Like I think it's a significantly better platform than like LinkedIn or any of the other platforms in terms of hiring.
So I mean, you're trying to say that platforms like AngelList meet like 90% of your needs, and for the rest 10% you have to build a offsite funnel.
No, I'm saying like AngelList is a great platform to get in front of many, many candidates. But you need to run your own like process to filter them and
Okay.
validate who they are, and the quality and all these things on your own. And that shouldn't be on AngelList because AngelList is terrible for that.
Okay.
So you get your distribution through AngelList, on AngelList, I might get 100 applicants a day. I can't look at 100 applicants a day. There's no way to filter them. AngelList will give you random information each time. And yeah, like AngelList is not very good for that. But you can kind of off platform that and do a very good job with that.
Okay. Okay. So your journey like started with Modify also started with being a pioneer, right? So what was that all about? Like how did you get into Pioneer and I'm also in very early stages, right? So I was also consider checking out Pioneer and probably applying to it. So would you love to share how was your experience and any advices with Pioneer?
So I think Pioneer is great. Right? Like Pioneer is awesome. I think the community is awesome. The network is awesome. I think Daniel is thinking about systems and problems in like a really great way. I think this idea of an infinite tournament is almost perfect for almost everything, right? If I was, like we talk so much about hiring, if I was Facebook and I was hiring, I would make Pioneer for hiring, right? If I was Google and I was hiring, I would make an infinite tournament for hiring. I think infinite tournaments are almost better in every single way for almost every single application process. Like, I don't see a reason why colleges should not be an infinite tournament, why hiring a big company should not be an infinite tournament, or why any of these things should not be an infinite tournament. So I think there's something really amazing about the way Pioneers built their community and the way they've nailed their incentives on the tournament level itself, where even before you become a pioneer, there's incredible value to be had by just participating in the tournament. And so like I would highly, highly recommend that anybody who's building something or thinking about building something or thinking about building something, all of the above should go apply to Pioneer. There's literally no reason why you should not apply to Pioneer. Uh, there is nothing stopping you. There is no deadlines. There is no uh, apply by this date, have this to
Right,
apply.
right.
None of that. Like
Yeah,
literally everybody should go apply.
they've
There's
made it like
no
a
reason.
async process, right?
I think it's a lot more than that. Like you definitely have to look into the infinite tournament and see how it works. But yeah, it's like what's beautiful about Pioneer is it's not a place and time application, right? It's not you apply today and you're done with it. It's like it's infinite, right? So yeah, like as you grow and you improve over time, your chances get better and better and better. And
Okay,
as you're more consistent, you're rewarded for that. As you keep delivering on your own goals, you're
okay,
rewarded for that. So
okay,
yeah, like I think Pioneer is great. Pioneer is incredible. The way I started Pioneer was kind of funny. I didn't really start it for any of these reasons or to get into Pioneer or anything like that. This was again in fall of 2020 when I had kind of like decided to take the gap semester. And I'm an incredibly lazy individual. If
okay,
there's a way I can not do some work, I will not do some work. So I knew I was taking a bet on myself and taking a risk by taking this break from college. And I knew I had to make good use of my time. Uh, so I joined Pioneer as a Monday morning deadline. I think now it's Tuesday morning. I think they might have changed. But a Monday morning deadline in India where every Monday I'd have to ship something because I would write my goals of what I wanted to do in the week. And next week I would have to do it. And the community would keep me accountable. So I had a friend who had participated in Pioneer long back when they just started. And he had talked great things about Pioneer. So I just decided to check it out, started doing this every Monday. This was probably in July or August of 2020. Absolutely loved it. Fell in love with the community, fell in love with everything immediately. Like it vastly increased my productivity. I was getting meaningful feedback on my product and my product development every week. I was giving meaningful feedback to others. I felt like I was actually learning what it meant to be a founder and
hmm,
building product. Because not only was I thinking about my product every week, I was looking at 10 other people's product and giving 10 other people product feedback.
right.
Uh, like vastly 10x my experience. And honestly, I'm still kind of surprised I got into Pioneer. I never expected to get into Pioneer. Never thought that would be a thing. But I guess after a couple of months of just kind of doing Pioneer and being consistent, I ended up reaching the top 50. And then I think I was the number one in Asia for for a while. I think for four or
Oh,
five months. Uh,
okay.
and we kind of became a pioneer. I kind of became a pioneer in October of 2020, October, November 2020.
Wow, that's fairly quick. So like in 3 4 months you were a pioneer.
Yeah.
Amazing, man. I mean, it's also, I think, I mean, I've heard like it's easier to get people on board on a difficult problem, right? YC says that um, if you're working on a difficult problem, people are much more attracted to you in some sense.
Well, obviously that's true, right? Like if you're an engineer, you want to work on more difficult things. If you are working on if you're working, let me put it like this. And we've had this conversation with my designer. It's like, where else is my designer going to go to get to design a video editor? Where else anybody on my team going to get to work on a video editor,
Right,
right? It's not something very common, right? Like if you go do some boring jobs somewhere else, it's like, okay, I'm building landing pages, cool.
right,
Yeah. Or I'm doing this cool, like I'm building something. So obviously, like difficult problems, interesting problems attract talent and attract more interesting people. That's always a given, right? That's why you want to be working on interesting things.
right, right. And then I read that you joined a couple of other things like also Folio came up and OnDeck came up. So I mean, I'm much more interested in OnDeck. I mean, OnDeck has been launching these amazing programs in the past year. Like, I've heard a lot about OnDeck in the last year. So, how has been the OnDeck Fellowship? Like, when did you join that, and how all of that happened?
So we are not part of an OnDeck fellowship. We're part of ODX, which is OnDeck's accelerator.
Okay,
It's like a Voicy competitor. So we are not part of like OnDeck founder fellows or Catalyst fellows or anything like that. That started in January, so it's been about almost a month. I think in a few, like I think tomorrow day after it'll be a month. It's been about a month since the program started. We got in early December, so like about a month earlier before the program started. So we got in early December. It's only been a month. I think it's been quite useful for us. Our build partner Gautam, he's amazing. The OnDeck community is like super useful to reach out to. You have access to this incredible network of people. Um, you can kind of reach into the network and get support for many things, right? So we have this guy called Asher, who's an expert in user interviews and growth. I talked to him a couple of times. It's been really useful. I talked to another product person from the OnDeck team a couple of days ago to think about product direction. You can reach out to like other founders in the OnDeck community and talk to them. That's also super valuable. I was talking to somebody else a couple of days ago again about like managing engineering teams and scaling engineering teams and all of that. It was super valuable conversation. So I think like context has definitely been super useful and super valuable to us so far, but it's been just a few weeks so far. So it's not like, uh, yeah, like
so
I'm sure there's a lot more value to
this
come in
happened
the future.
in December of last year.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so it's fairly recent. Okay. But yeah, I think the thing I love about Pioneer and OnDeck is unlike YC's programs, these are on like a rolling basis. You come whenever you want, and you uh, yeah, the that's it's more of it's relatively more async here in terms of you get in and get advice. So that's one thing I love about them.
Yeah, but I think there's a lot of value. Well, I think YC is also doing that now. They have early applications. So you can almost apply year round to YC too. Uh, in terms of ODX, even though you can apply, like you can apply right now for ODX, but the batch will only start in April for you. So like you'd
Okay,
get into ODX earlier, so the application is rolling, but practically the batch would start in April, right? Or something like that. I'm not 100% sure when the next batch is starting. I think April.
okay.
So I think like kind of functions similarly to YC. There are just more batches here, and there are four batches instead of two batches here. That's all. That's
But
true for Pioneer too, by the way. Like Pioneer also like the core batches, they
mhm,
are um, they are not immediate. Like there are fixed dates when they start internally, and it's just that you're onboarded to Pioneer, rolling, and then
before that.
whenever the batch starts, the batch. Yeah.
Okay, okay. But yeah, that's still good. But yeah, for a startup, for a founder that is just starting out on his product, like 1 month in or 2 month in, Pioneer. is the best place to get started, right? Or ODX you can go after for a few months, I guess, and you can start with Pioneer first.
I think Pioneer is the perfect place for anybody to get started.
Okay. Um, what were some of the mistakes that you would say that you learn in the hard way in your journey?
See, again, this is a very broad question. What kind of
I mean,
mistakes? What
the
journey?
Modfy journey.
Like,
Any
that's
kind of.
also a very broad question, right?
Okay.
Uh, uh, like, yeah, I think you kind of want to ask like generally more specific questions. Uh, but yeah, so again, what kind of mistakes in what context? Uh, and then, yeah.
Um, I would say, hmm. In terms of building a product, I mean, so one thing that I did in building my last side project was that I used a relatively new technology to build my project, and that was a big mistake to do because the ecosystem around that technology is very low, and I had to reinvent the wheel in a lot of use cases. So that was a kind of a technical mistake that I made. Like it would have been better to go with a boring technology to build my product rather than building a new product with a new technology. So I mean, yeah, somewhere something along these lines. Any technical challenge, any technical mistake that you made, that comes top of your head.
I think a lot of technical mistakes we made. Um, I think the way we structured our code base is not great. We have this kind of weird monorepo structure that's kind of like a little bit annoying. I think the lack of experience in terms of like scoping out such a big project in terms of me and my co-founder is definitely showing. I think we tend to over abstract some of our things too much. There are like too many abstractions happening in some places. I think like there's some lack of documentation in some places. Things are not necessarily documented the best. I think we're not necessarily great at refactoring things. So when we have to refactor things, things can kind of break. But I think the biggest mistake in all of these like product stuff is just about like um, probably building too much product before
Hmm.
like really launching or like not launching soon enough. We're kind of in like an early access phase. I think you joined our Discord today and tried to get access to the
Right,
product.
right.
So it is in public beta. People can kind of get the access to the product and try it out. But we should have probably put that out much sooner and then have like much more feedback on like where we should be building our features and what we should be working on. I think there's like a lot of focus on perfection. So like some of our competitors had really shitty timelines, and we were like, hey, we want to build the best timeline, and our timeline should function like this. It should take all these complexities from the way the Final Cut timeline works, which is called a magnetic timeline, and it's supposed to do this and it's supposed to do that, and like let's have all this finesse and polish here and polish there, and all these things that we probably shouldn't have done.
Mhm.
Should have probably like made the scope of the project much slower to launch first. But yeah, like these are like kind of product building engineering mistakes rather than necessarily uh, like these are product building mistakes rather than necessarily engineering mistakes per se.
Okay, okay. But yeah, still that helps, yeah. So I mean, build less, launch early. You would say that.
Yeah, something like that.
Okay. So what's the user base and revenue look like for Modfy? Like, I don't see a pricing page right now. So I mean, the product is still pre-revenue, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so like when's the like the wait list will go off? Any plans for that? Any date for that?
Well, there's no wait list. Who said there's a wait list?
Okay, it's in public
Right.
beta. Okay. I mean, so you will be doing a relaunch because right now like you have to go through a verify step, right? So I'm assuming you will do a relaunch when you will kind of open access to everyone uh, on the website itself.
So I think that's not really a priority, right? A priority is finding product market fit, finding a small group of users who really love the product. use the product on a weekly basis. The goal is not really like to do kind of a public splashy launch. I think like for the kind of people that we necessarily want to get in right now, if going through a Discord is really an unnecessary step, it's fine. We ideally want people who are willing to give feedback and willing
Right.
to really like talk about the product anyway. So like if you're really stumped by the added step of going to the Discord, you're probably not a very useful user to have at the moment anyway. So yeah, there's no real focus on terms of like uh, kind of self-serve access or things like that at the moment.
Okay. Okay. I mean, so you are focused also on the creator economy, right? That will become a one of the pitch points in Modfy. Are there any plans for Web3, like any uh, plans to leverage it in any way?
Um, I think so. I think there's a lot of things about like Web3 that are interesting and not interesting. I think about like the space overall is interesting. I think the hype and the excess money and all of that is kind of uninteresting and not really what we're looking at. If you look at Web3 at its corest, and this is kind of an argument that my co-founder is better to make than I am. Web3 is almost more about decentralized computing than anything else, right? Like money and crypto and NFTs and DeFi, all of these things are extensions on top of that. And Web3 is just kind of a buzzword, which is kind of like meaningless. But really, you're talking about like, we wanted decentralized computing. Fundamentally, what we are building is decentralized computing, right?
Right. Right.
You are computing and processing your video on your own machine without a server. Uh, there might be some more things to leverage actual blockchains later in interesting capacities. Obviously, things like live peer are very exciting. If we can use them in any capacity, that would be very interesting. But for me, I am of the state of like Web3 is very exciting. I have a lot of friends working in that space, but I still don't see any practical consumer applications in the sense that like uh, think about it like the way I think about it is like, would you pay $60 for delivery on Amazon or on Swiggy or for literally anything else? Then why
Right.
would I pay that for gas? I'm not desensitized to say that's not $60, that's 0.1. Right? Like I don't buy that argument. Would you pay $60 for gas on anything else? No. So till that comes down, I think my co-founder is very excited by Solana. He loves Rust. So I think
Okay.
there's some things we can potentially explore there. But I think this kind of idea of like chasing trends is not super exciting, right? We are almost not even part of the creative economy. We are not in the goal of making creators make more money. We are in the goal of making more creators.
Okay.
We
Okay.
have we have a level below the creative economy, right? Like the creative economy is like, how do I make a creator's life easier and allow them to make more money? Our goal is how do we make more creators? How do we make it easier to make content? That's a different thing. So I wouldn't necessarily put us in any of those kind of buzzwords. I think chasing trends, chasing buzzwords is uh, not really worthwhile. So
Right. Right. Yeah. At least in the beginning, yeah, you have to, I guess, stay true to your product vision and strategy. So yeah, definitely that makes so much sense. How is your life as a founder been these couple of years? Like personally, in the past month, I have a hard time sleeping because when I lay down, I just get so many ideas and envision what's the next day we gonna be like. So is it like a similar challenge for you, or what's your day like?
there are some good days, there's some bad days, there's a lot of tension. Uh, the highs are very high, the lows are very low. Uh, right? Sometimes it feels like, what am I even doing with my life? What is this? Nothing's working. Some days it feels great. It's incredibly rewarding. It's super exciting. Um, I like it's an incredible feeling. So I think it's kind of ups and downs. It's kind of everybody's found a journey, like a lot of highs, a lot of lows. But overall, I would say I definitely do like it. I like the ability to work for myself. I like the ability to build what I want to be building the way I want to be building it.
Right. Any other dropouts that you met along on your Twitter journey all this while? Because I would love to connect with more people and build a community around this.
So I've actually been incredibly surprised by the amount of friends that I have who have dropped out. Uh, but yeah, I've had the opportunity to connect with a lot of incredibly talented friends, both in India, abroad, in the West, and even in other parts of the world, who are like not gone to college or dropped out and working on interesting things that might be people like Aditya working in companies, people building incredible companies, and friends figuring it out along the way. So I think there are a lot of those. I think specific introductions probably not best to kind of keep it like one
Correct.
on one. Yeah.
I mean, the thing I love about us is that we are not prodigies. Aditya, you and I, right? We worked hard. Uh, I mean, I don't know about you, but I would say that I was not a project prodigy, right? I like to really understand programming. It took for the first 2 years. I just pasted code from tutorials, trying to figure things out, make it a natural habit. But eventually, over the years, we that became like a muscle memory and a natural instinct. And yeah, we are doing incredible things. And I mean, we are much more relatable than prodigies and dropouts that you see as Mark, because those are like one in a billion stories. But what we are essentially, what our journey is essentially could be anybody's journey if they just follow the right path.
Yeah, so I completely agree. I think it's like people need to think about these things more as like um, steps in a journey. Like you don't want to think about like, oh, I'm going to drop out and build $1 billion company at once. These things kind of happen like step by step in different stages. And if you think about it like that, then it becomes like much easier to kind of digest and think about like how I could like how these um, like I honestly think even if you look at the incredible people that you might say are prodigies, if you think about them, if you probably knew them, their journeys are probably much more down to earth too. Like,
Right,
from just
right.
from the outside, uh, and with so much noise and so many years, it looks when you look back, it looks like, oh yeah, these guys knew what they were doing from day one, and they're prodigies. I suspect that's not fully the truth.
I mean, yeah, yeah. If you say like that, yeah, that also makes sense. Yeah, probably yeah, you need to dig into the person's past, what he did on day one till the present day to get a full picture. Yeah, that is definitely there. I mean, if someone is dropping out, what all things he should consider? Like, what's the framework? When do you finally decide to take the leap? What advice you give to a person?
I think I think like there's a lot of context here. I think like kind of giving of uh, this general advice about things is not super useful. Each advice is very specific, right? Like what are your skill sets? What do you know? What do you not know? What is your network? What is your ability to work for yourself? What is your risk tolerance? What is your financial situation? Um, where in the world are you? I think dropping out in India is a very different story than dropping out in the West, right?
Right,
I kind of dropped out in India, but also kind of dropped out in the West. So I am not necessarily the person to give the best advice for that. I think, like honestly, I don't know how much you talked to Aditya, but I think like Aditya's journey to drop out is far more daring, far more courageous, and far more risk taking than
right.
what I did. So I think there are a lot of journeys in dropping out, a lot of considerations to make. But I would say it's something that you should take about as like you should think about it as a very serious option. I think in the world today, if you have competent skills, real skills, it is not inconceivable, even very difficult to get employed and get have a good life while dropping out. And a lot of people have done it. So just have definitely something to consider. The big thing I would say to prevent dropping out is like if you really don't know what to do with your life, what you want to do with life, or you don't have conviction, then you probably shouldn't.
Right.
Or if you're extremely risk averse, like
Right.
these are the kind of three things I would really like advise against people dropping out. Like you can think about your personal conviction to work on side projects or work on things even before dropping out, right? And there
Mhm.
are a lot of ways you can. Um, the other question to ask is like, why do you want to drop out? I think that answer can be very different for many people. Something is like, I don't want to lose the opportunity cost of spending 4 years here.
Mhm.
Something is like, I don't want to. I don't want to spend X amount of money, right? Like that can be $200,000, but that can also be $10,000, right? That can be any amount of money, and say like, I don't want to spend this amount of money. This amount of money is not something I can afford to spend. I think it's a very valid reason to drop out. The other reason is I'm not enjoying myself or not learning anything, not really growing. That's a valid reason to drop out. But I also don't think everybody has to drop out, right? I just think what should change is college should not be a default and it should be a decision. You should
Right.
have a great reason why you're going to college or why you're at college. I think defaults are very, very dangerous, right? They're very powerful, but they're very dangerous. So why am I in college? It's because everybody goes to college after school. I think it's a really bad answer today, right? Like
Mhm.
I think you have to have a really good answer why you're there and what you intend to get from college, and then similarly through the college years, you kind of have to have an answer. Why am I still here in my second year? Why am I still here in my third year? Am I really getting value out of this place? Am I really learning something, or am I really growing? And if the answer is no, then you probably shouldn't be there.
Right.
But yeah, like I wouldn't necessarily encourage everybody to drop out. It's definitely not for everybody. Um, right? There are a lot of reasons um, to stay in college, both
Mhm.
from the way, depending on what you want to do in life, right? Like if you want to be a physicist, I would love for you to drop out, but probably you can't.
Right.
Like the
Right.
world is not set up to encourage you to drop out in the same capacities it is set up to encourage software engineers to drop out, right?
Right.
So
I
like
mean,
I think
yeah.
this kind of general advice is not very useful.
Right. Yeah. Dropping out is a very kind of a serious thing right now. You have to evaluate your goals and your situation, and it's like a 3 to 6 month. You should plan it out and see what you want out of this journey, and then really decide.
So yeah, I would disagree, right? I think in India it's slightly different because it's not as easy to do. But if you have the opportunity, take a semester off, dude. It's as simple as that.
Yeah,
Take a
that's
semester
that's
off,
a
take a
much
year
better
off.
alternative. Yeah.
Who said you have to drop out? Right?
Right.
Who said you have to drop out? I haven't told my college I dropped out even now. I just stopped communicating with them. I took one semester off, then became a second semester off, then
Okay.
became a third semester off, became a fourth semester off. And am I going to go back? Probably not. Right? Definitely not to that college. Am I going to go back to some college? Probably not. But like it doesn't have to be this kind of ultimatum decision, especially there are definitely colleges that allow you to do that in India too. But especially abroad, like there's no reason to like have this kind of ultimatum decision of like, oh, I'm dropping out and I'm going to go like do this big thing. Take a
Okay.
semester off, take a year off, go from there.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, that's a much better strategy. Yeah.
Even for Aditya, he can tell you his story. Like he took a year off and he said, I'm going to take a year to bet on myself. And if it doesn't work, I'm going to go back to college. It's very simple. Like take a year off, bet on yourself, see what you can do, and then kind
Right.
of take it from there.
Right.
Um,
I'm not doing that kind of in a job, so I'm giving myself a year, and if things don't work out, then I go back to a job. Then yeah. So I'm doing that setup in a in a job scenario. Okay. But yeah, that's a lot of useful advice. What advice would you give in the case of a founder who is just starting out, who is in first month or second month? What should he be looking out for? Like, what should be his focus? He has a problem that he wants to solve. But yeah, what should he what should he or her keep in mind?
I think this again. Uh, I think founders hear a lot of bad advice. So that's the first thing I'd say. Like, there's just a lot of bad advice that goes around. Take everything you kind of hear and put it on a grain of salt. Probably don't listen to me. Like, I'm
Okay.
not a successful founder. I might be a little bit ahead of you in your journey, but I'm definitely not a successful founder. Go talk to people who have exited multiple times who know what they're doing. But I think the thing is like, keep doing whatever you need to do that allows you to keep working, right? That may not be the best thing for your company, but your company dead is worse than your company alive. So the way I think about it is like, if me spending 60% of my time engineering when I'm not supposed to be is what is allowing me to keep working in my company, that's fine. Do that. Do whatever you need to do to keep doing your company. I also think like even we kind of started as a side project, right? So I think like people have this aversion to become, oh, I want to be CEO, I want to be a founder, I want to be this. Don't do that. Make a side project. Start something small. The barrier to entry is like much lower. Actually, it's much better. Like if you have an open source side project, marketing that stuff is much easier. People are
Right.
much more receptive to that kind of thing. Right? And start much smaller like that. So I think that's useful. The last thing I'd say is find a community. Right? I think Pioneer is one of the best. Um, it's very welcoming. It's very global. But OnDeck has a lot of great offerings too, with OnDeck Catalyst founders and OnDeck founder fellowship. So find a community, find friends that you can kind of trust, who are in similar stages in your journey, maybe uh, couple of stages ahead, couple of stages behind, or whatever. People you can kind of trust and really confide in, get valuable advice to talk to. It's kind of what I'd say. But in general, yeah, like this kind of unspecified advice is not very useful.
Okay. Okay. I mean that was the most of the questions I had. Thanks for joining in, and for everybody watching this video, check out Modfy.video and join the Discord channel and try out the product and give your ideas. And yeah, thanks for joining, Rahul. Had a lovely time learning and talking with you.
Yeah, great. No problem. Happy to help. Happy to share. If it's useful for anybody, that's good.
Sure.